3 years ago, a devastating alien invasion plunged the world into a gruesome war that defied words. After various events, I, who succeeded in destroying all the aliens, was scheduled to retire today. 3 years since I was drafted as a soldier, entering middle school at the same time, it all went by in a flash. Taka revealed his plan to return to his hometown, while Natalie, whose home was destroyed, declared she would go with him to live together. Natalie playfully demanded Taka take her to Japan too, wanting to live with a strong man and split expenses evenly. Natalie anticipated their new life together, hoping no one would think she was dead, and then they would have to return home. Vice Corporal Shibusaki questioned Taka's retirement request, suggesting he write a resignation letter instead of just going home. Natalie noticed the stationery prices had increased again, finding the selection plain and unlovely, costing $300. Daisy Reeves, from the former Joint Special Command 3rd Land Assault Unit, greeted Vice Corporal Shibusaki and Natalie. Daisy expressed her gratitude, explaining she used to work at an orphanage in a neighboring country where conscription was enforced. She tearfully thanked them, relieved that children no longer had to go to war, and she wouldn't hear of their deaths. Taka felt the awkward atmosphere and urged Natalie to hurry home, as they shouldn't stay too long. Natalie, unaccustomed to praise, felt itchy and didn't know how to react when Daisy suddenly started crying. He insisted they needed to quickly bring the retirement request, stating he didn't want any more weird commotions. Displaying the super cute letter paper Daisy Reeves gave them as a thank you gift, Taka explained to Natalie that Daisy no longer needed it. Upon submitting their retirement request to the Director General, Taka and Natalie were met with immediate rejection, leaving them bewildered. Vice Corporal Shibusaki accused the Director General of sexual harassment for his sensitive reaction to Takashi-kun, threatening a court-martial. The Director General questioned why Taka and Natalie were retiring, pleading with them to consider his feelings and the busy situation since the war. The Director General presented a contract stating they wouldn't tell anyone about what they saw or heard during the war, acknowledging their desire to hide it. Vice Corporal Shibusaki stated he felt bad for the Director General, but had no authority or responsibility, calling himself a mere 16-year-old brat. Vice Corporal Shibusaki declared that since Takashi-kun would be the Director General's exclusive partner, retirement was forbidden. The Director General insisted Taka and Natalie would rot away miserably together if separated, forcing them to stay even if he had to use all his power. Taka cursed, unwilling to go home only as a reserve soldier, and firmly stated his desire to retire completely from the military. One soldier suggested they take the money and live it up, mentioning they'd still get paid as reserve soldiers and didn't want to be involved with the military anymore. Natalie questioned why she had to start a life on the run with Taka when peace had finally returned. Taka declared his desire to live a normal high school life and returned to Japan with Natalie. The Director General rejected their retirement requests, citing a binding contract and Taka's undefined new role. Natalie marveled at Taka's unchanged hometown, relieved they had managed to return alive after 3 years. While Natalie indulged in sentimentality, Taka warned her to say nothing unnecessary before they reached his parents' house. Taka reflected that the unchanging peace he fought for was right here, but he had changed. He acknowledged that, contrary to the peaceful days, he was the one who had transformed. With tears streaming, Karin pleaded with Taka to stay, mourning his impending departure and her dread of losing him. Her breath hitching, Karin sobbed violently while gripping Taka tightly, unable to let go. 3 years prior, Karin recalled how Taka, once a regular boy, had been conscripted into the war, a reality she still couldn't fully grasp. She confessed to checking for his death notification daily, grateful he was still alive. Taka returned, greeting his sister, Nisan, and telling her he had somehow made it back alive. Karin gasped, her eyes widening as she recognized Taka, stammering his name in disbelief and relief. Overwhelmed, Karin embraced Taka tightly, weeping and confessing her love for him, her voice choked with emotion. Taka noticed his sister looked haggard and suggested they go get some beef bowls, as he was starving anyway. Karin, surprised by Natalie's presence, asked who she was and if she was Taka's wife, while Taka introduced Natalie. Taka suggested they eat first, and Karin questioned if the amount of food was enough for them. Karin playfully questioned Taka about his relationship with Natalie, asking if they were dating, to which Natalie declared they were best friends. Taka explained that squads often got wiped out, and survivors frequently died later, making their survival remarkable. He shared how soldiers motivated themselves by dreaming of marriage, children, and seeing their families again, even just the sound of dating. Taka apologized for bringing up the cruel realities of war, suggesting they focus on eating a lot to regain their energy. He ordered a katsu curry, asked his sister what she wanted, and then commented on his mother and Natalie being safe and sound. Taka's mother tearfully welcomed him home, noting how thin and small she had become and how their heights had reversed. His mother expressed immense relief that Takashi was safe, stating that his safety was all that mattered and apologizing for causing worry. Taka introduced Natalie, his comrade in arms, to his mother and sister, mentioning that his hometown had been wiped out. His mother questioned if Natalie was just a friend, but Taka clarified she was an excellent comrade in arms known throughout the military for saving him. With tears in her eyes, she thanked them profusely for saving her son, while Taka's mother warmly invited her to stay forever. Her voice trembling, she expressed deep gratitude for their acceptance, repeating her thanks without pause. Taka's parents' swift acceptance left her marveling at their kindness, which she attributed to her own unwavering integrity. Taka's mother suggested Natalie's inner self hadn't come out, prompting Natalie to ask if Taka was sure he didn't tell them more about his body. Taka confessed he'd originally intended to tell them the truth, but he just couldn't bring himself to say it. Natalie explained that his mother was incredibly happy, and he couldn't tell her son's body had been modified, while she was crying like that. Karin excitedly declared that her transfer destination was Taka's high school, eager to make his life fun. She promised to make him cry at graduation from having too much fun, and Taka nervously asked if she'd take responsibility if it wasn't fun. Shibusaki Karin snapped, frustrated that her target wasn't responding, and vowed to make them her woman. A student grumbled that studying for the exam was a pain and suggested asking the military to pull some strings for a transfer. Another student lamented not having time for cram school, trying to cover 3 years of middle school studies by just browsing books at the store, calling it a piece of cake. A third student bragged that their high school's deviation value was too high for someone to pass just by browsing, telling their older sister to be quiet and concentrate. Someone observed that for the past 5 days, 2 individuals had been repeatedly browsing books from opening to closing time, spending over 6 hours today as well. One person asked if they were okay with studying, to which the other replied they were done and wanted to look around the store, expressing affection for the asker. A voice commented that the distance between Tak-kun and Natalie Chan felt off for a boy and girl their age, noting they were always together. Someone yelled at Shibusaki, demanding to know why he wasn't answering his phone. Shibusaki was accused of mocking them, followed by an English question about what they wanted him to do after he destroyed them, and then another asking if they wanted to die. A voice declared they would violate someone so hard they'd have to leave, telling them they had nerve looking smug, followed by an English threat to kill them. Someone remarked that Natalie looked like a different person, questioning if it was really Natalie Chan. A figure questioned whether Natalie's drastic change was genuine, asking aloud if she was who she seemed. a participant challenged Tak-kun's bloodthirsty aura, demanding an explanation for his hostility. Two figures whispered about someone stalking a meat bag and how cocky he seemed, while the target insisted he'd done nothing wrong. One of them asked if the other's Ni-san was her boyfriend, to which she replied she was solely devoted to Tak-kun, noting Natalie's short-tempered impression. A third person confirmed they were dating, then questioned a man in a tight shirt, speculating he was an idiot who didn't know his own size, prompting a hushed warning. Someone explained that everyone in their high school knew Ogami Tenga, an anomaly who enjoyed seeing others suffer and was strong enough to nearly kill opponents. Tenga called out to Shibusaki, lamenting becoming one of them and asking if he cared about his classmates who protected him at risk of their lives, cornering him. He continued, stating he didn't want to involve Tak-kun and others or make him go through anything painful, recognizing Tenga as too much of a hazard. A character named Romanj called out to Ni-san, who seemed distressed, and then exclaimed that Tak-kun was spilling something. Tenga Ogami invited someone to his house, suggesting that perhaps he should prepare himself and accept the invitation as the only way, considering the precious things. A clerk happily explained that the beautiful girl discount applied to him, even after Natalie stopped browsing, though the clerk had smiled happily when she was browsing earlier. Someone asked Ni-san if she was spacing out, noticing she had been like that since they got back and inquiring if something happened or if she was panicking too much. After a meal, one person thanked the other, who replied it was nothing, but was called out for being bad at covering things up. The first person denied talking about anything, claiming to be the same as always, but was accused of worrying about a specific guy since that afternoon and acting weird. The sister asked if the boy was a stalker, recalling Natalie's words, but he denied it with a tearful face. He thought about how closely Tak-kun had been watching him, not wanting to involve him or have him save him, but also not knowing what to do with his conflicting feelings. The sister advised him that keeping worries to himself would narrow his perspective, suggesting he confide in those around him. Someone expressed disbelief at the boy's nature, wishing such scumbags would appear on the battlefield to be dealt with. He apologized to Tak-kun for getting him involved, stating he'd rather Tak-kun be harmed than the other way around, then initiated blocking. He reassured that Tak-kun and Natalie would be safe, insisting he could handle the situation and that Natalie was with him. The sister suggested they go home, reminding him they couldn't just shut themselves in with the transfer exam approaching and that they needed to find a new bookstore. He declared they would act as a trio for Ogami's sake, but then noticed they were being followed and questioned if he could handle them. He asked Tak-kun what he meant, suggesting they settle their worries first, but Tak-kun insisted it was fine and pointed towards the bookstore. The narrator reflected on how frightening it was to grow accustomed to things, finding Ni-san's reaction a welcome change. Shibusaki confronted Taka, accusing him of ignoring his calls and involving the police. Shibusaki warned Taka not to underestimate him, acknowledging Ogami and his crude speech, but commanded Taka to stand down. Taka calmly told Shibusaki it was fine to call the cops, as someone else would do it anyway, after Shibusaki sent a provocative email. Shibusaki screamed that he would never forgive Taka, asking if Taka was underestimating him. Taka's sister declared she didn't want to attend a school with Shibusaki, recalling Taka's promise to make her high school life fun. She chastised Shibusaki for attacking a woman for his desires and told him to take his selfish desires to his mother. Natalie agreed, stating that with someone like Shibusaki around, they wouldn't have the school life they dreamed of. He told Ogami that this was something he started. To Ogami, Taka emphasized that this was something he started. For Ogami, Taka stressed that this was something he started. The narrator questioned what this site was. Vice Corporal Shibusaki accused Taka and Natalie of ignoring him and involving the police, his voice laced with a desperate, almost childish plea. Taka told Natalie to go ahead with Nissan, saying he would hang back for a bit longer. Vice Corporal Shibusaki confronted Taka and Natalie, noting their unusual calm, despite their abnormal strength, like shattering the road with bare hands. The two pleaded for their lives, offering to do anything to be spared. Shibusaki mockingly suggested cutting off their fingers, noting their commuter passes and insurance. He then ordered them to distribute their money to victims and leave immediately, with no trace of the tyrant Ogami remaining. A week later, Taka and Natalie discussed how easy the transfer exam was, feeling confident about their upcoming month at the new school. Taka's sister excitedly asked Taka about his body now that the exam was over, suspecting something happened on the battlefield. She pointed out that human strength couldn't shatter asphalt, and Taka's sister had gone through a terrible time. The moment he punched through the asphalt, Taka admitted regretting his impulsive act. Relieved, his sister waited until after the exam to question him. Despite knowing space invaders attacked, Taka's sister confessed she'd scoured the internet post-war for his safety, finding no trace of answers. The military's modifications to his and Natalie's bodies, Taka explained, were meant to annihilate aliens, a bizarre choice to send middle schoolers to battle. His sister asked if he became a machine, but Taka clarified that his modification was different from those who were mechanized, noting her hand felt soft and warm. Taka explained he couldn't say much, but to survive, he took in a massive amount of influence, and the military did whatever they wanted. Taka explained that his modifications were a result of accepting experimental drugs without side effects, making his capabilities outstanding even among past soldiers. He recounted how the war's tide dramatically shifted after his involvement in critical battles like the Deneb Retreat and the Gulf Strait defense. Natalie questioned if he was still human, to which Taka responded that such a thought was understandable given the circumstances. Taka acknowledged that even if he were considered a monster, it wouldn't change the fact that unbelievable things were happening to him while others lived normally. His sister declared that no matter his physical form, Taka was family, and she would protect him, just as Natalie had been fighting for him. She expressed her happiness about their upcoming high school commute and assured Taka that life would be fun, calling him a kind son and resolving everything. Karin confronted Takashi, holding up an item found in his room and demanding to know if he understood the implications of his actions. Fumika insisted their affections were purely familial, telling Karin to stop lusting after her own brother. Fumika declared Takashi was the only one for her, and her classmates were kept away from her house because of his presence. Karin explained Ogami had moved away, and she had hoped to attend school with Takashi again, but everyone was waiting for him. Takashi seemed to have properly moved away, and Karin suggested they go to school together again, but worried about troublesome rumors starting. Karin scolded Takashi for taking something without permission, questioning why he was taking it out when it was clearly developed for her. With a sharp tone, Karin reminded Takashi to keep his voice down but promised to cover for him if needed, emphasizing that maintaining their current dynamic was preferable to isolation. Teasingly, Karin probed Takashi about his tearful expression, mocking his reliance on athletics and claiming physical prowess held no value in strategic conflicts. Observing Takashi's sluggish demeanor, Karin noted his morning fatigue, questioning his late-night habits and urging him to prioritize rest for better focus. Takashi asked who it was, and Renji responded with a sigh, asking if he had stayed up late yesterday and telling him to go to sleep early. Renji exclaimed Takashi should have told him right away if he was back, and Takashi replied he had returned to Japan about a month ago. Renji asked if a pretty blonde girl was Takashi's girlfriend, and Takashi clarified she was his comrade in arms, promising to make Renji his subordinate. Karin asked Takashi if he was already going home, reminding him they'd see each other every day at the same high school, and he shouldn't make that face. Takashi replied he was happy, thanking Renji. Renji asked if Fumika was there, noting it had been a while. Mistaking Renji for Fumika's friends, Karin insisted he couldn't go anywhere and begged him to come down, promising she'd return shortly. Excitedly, Karin called out, "Taka-chan," as she rushed toward him. "Welcome home," Karin exclaimed, adding that she'd been waiting to celebrate everything with him. With nostalgic enthusiasm, Karin declared Fumika hadn't changed and assured Takashi she'd prepared everything perfectly. Natalie dramatically announced, "I'm Takashi's wife." "I am Shibasaki Nat-Ali. You really did it this time, Nat-Ali-kun." She continued, blaming Takashi for flirting with another woman and warning Fumika that she was a girl who didn't take jokes lightly, threatening a bloodbath. Fumika sputtered, asking what Natalie was talking about, and insisted that Takashi and she were in a serious relationship, expecting him to deny it. Takashi, confused, asked Natalie what she was talking about, while Natalie insisted they had planned their future perfectly, calling it a lie. Natalie then declared to Fumika that Takashi was just playing along with her practical joke, assuring her it was all a lie and a joke. Fumika, flustered, yelled at Takashi to cut it out, stating they weren't living together and that nothing would happen between them. Natalie explained she just wanted to see a bloodbath like in a daytime soap opera and felt she went through a terrible time because of Takashi. Shibasaki Takashi stared at the official notice confirming his acceptance into the transfer program. He breathed a sigh of relief, realizing that failing would have made facing the heroes impossible, and he resolved to enjoy this peace for everyone's sake. Takashi celebrated passing, thrilled at the prospect of becoming a normal high school student and reporting his success after the war. He then noticed a message from Sherry, asking about the Director General's well-being and mentioning her own return home. The message described Sherry as a troublemaker rivaling Natalie, who had also returned to her hometown after the war concluded. Natalie, overhearing about Sherry, mused about Japan and Takashi's hometown, resolving to fully enjoy her own everyday life there. Someone exclaimed, "Hey, look at this! Isn't it so cute?" They commented that Natalie looked like a doll, that the uniform suited her perfectly, and that it was surprisingly cute, finding it odd that the Natalie feared on the battlefield as an end point of life was being described this way. They questioned if that same Natalie, after simply putting on a uniform, had become cute through some strange magic, and if Taka had fallen in love with her all over again. Someone declared they were going to send their super cute uniform look to Sherry and asked if Taka knew Sherry's contact info, requesting it too, and if Sherry-chan was also a friend from the military. The speaker stated they could speak English, Chinese, and Spanish, and that they were all friends from overseas, then asked Taka-kun if he could speak English, marveling at how amazing it was, and mentioning studying for the transfer exam. Someone mentioned Sherry was saying things they didn't really get, and when asked what was wrong, they replied, "No, it's a pain, so I'm just going to pretend I didn't see it," wondering what Sherry was doing right now. A voice announced that high school life started today. A classmate questioned whether the outfit appeared odd, and if that was typical, while a second insisted it looked perfectly fine, and they were overthinking. Yet a third countered that it indeed looked strange on everyone, shouting for Taka-kun's opinion. Another student marveled that the uniform was already completed, pointing out the acceptance letter had just arrived yesterday, and that they'd received both the new uniform and the latest smartphone. A parent insisted they'd already transferred the admission fee, requesting to see the documents and their smartphone as well, adding they'd paid it earlier using their military salary and never imagined Taka would buy one for them. One voice mused that their sense of normalcy had shifted dramatically over 3 years, despite vowing to be a better child from now on, while another warned that hesitating would leave them stranded. The speaker proclaimed they were officially a regular high school student starting today, double-checking that it was indeed the correct day and expressing eagerness for the transfer students' arrival. A student chirped they downloaded a translation app specifically for today, buzzing with anticipation for the transfer students to arrive soon. A character worried the girls were gossiping about them, concerned they might take a Mano-kun, and questioned why everyone was making such a fuss. A voice announced that everyone had brought the transfer students, and then asked the 2 newcomers to introduce themselves. The 2 transfer students were asked to introduce themselves to the assembled group. The crowd erupted in cheers and exclamations of "so cute," and "she looks like a doll," upon seeing Natalie, calling her an angel. Someone whispered that Natalie's Japanese was so good and her intonation perfect, calling her amazing, cute, and a perfect student. A character expressed happiness at inviting Natalie, noting she seemed to be having fun, while others were too obsessed with her to notice them. Someone suggested throwing a welcome party for Natalie, and then proposed that Taka walk home with her while they went to the baseball club. A character confirmed they would be heading to the baseball club. Someone politely asked for a light, then apologized for needing it. A character expressed deep gratitude, stating they no longer had to use a certain power. A character declared it was fine, that they were just a normal high schooler, and no different from the other students there. Taka returned home, wondering if Natalie was back yet as the day had grown late. Sherry explained that someone named Seal had come to their house, causing a commotion and demanding Taka come out. Taka asked if Sherry had seen where those people were fighting, questioning what was happening. A faint sound could be heard from the yard. The sound grew louder, indicating immediate danger. Taka realized he had been completely off guard, hearing the sound of his daily life crumbling. One observer noted that both combatants had completely lost their minds. Realizing the need to intervene, he acted upon seeing them use the special bio soldier's trump card. Shouting for them to stop, he declared his ability to match their capabilities. Insisting he could replicate their actions, he pressed his point forcefully. Yelling at the 2 idiots to cease their reckless behavior, he demanded compliance. Natalie insisted Taka attacked Sherry only because she tried to get ahead of him. Natalie learned that Taka had only returned home temporarily, as Director Garnett confirmed he was still on the roster. When Natalie hesitated, Sherry pressed her for news, only to hear it was cruel and too much. With her savings exhausted, Sherry revealed she'd purchased a white house with a sprawling yard. The house symbolized peace for Sherry, who believed their trio could finally live happily, now the Debris War had ended. Natalie warned Sherry not to get too involved with Taka, mentioning he said she would live happily with her lover in her hometown. Karin Shibusaki introduced herself as a mixed-type special bio soldier, stating Taka's policy was not to understand model types. Karin explained she was a mixed-type special bio soldier named Seal, and that they wouldn't understand even if she revealed her model type. Sherry anxiously asked if there were any after effects from the modifications, such as shortened lifespans or physical defects. She explained that modified soldiers were divided into types, and the film had no easily noticeable effects, only making them hungry. Sherry asked if Natalie could give the military her account number later, as she could now fully enjoy high school life without worries. Someone called the person peace-addled and slowpokey, unable to even pour a drink properly. The narrator described Kikyogahara Rinko as the kind of person fitting for a triumphant hero. Taka suggested stopping for beef bowls on the way home, but Natalie wanted to leave Sherry alone to study for her transfer exam. Sherry explained that Rinko, along with Renji and Fumika, was another one of her best friends, and she wanted to introduce Rinko-chan to Natalie. Natalie mused that while she was fighting on the battlefield, Rinko was working hard too, recalling how Rinko used to get teased for being tall since elementary school, but was now a charismatic model. Someone exclaimed in disbelief, recognizing the tall woman as Kikyogahara Rinko, with another person excitedly confirming it was Rinko-chan. Natalie called out to Rinko, asking if she was okay, because she looked like she was about to die, while Taka wondered if she wouldn't even notice if they pranked her due to her unresponsiveness. Taka remarked that this felt nostalgic, remembering how he used to get hit a lot 3 years ago, as Rinko stared in shock, asking why he was alive. Natalie commented that those weren't exactly words to throw at a friend not seen in a while, acknowledging Rinko's harshness, but also her unique personality, while Taka was still processing her disbelief about him being alive. Rinko, flustered, stated that whether they were happy about their reunion or disbelieving he was alive didn't matter, as she had just received a video call from her manager. A voice exclaimed that these weren't human movements, and someone recognized the real Kikyogahara Rinko before asking who the speaker was. A voice declared they were survivors of the war with the debris, their bodies modified on the battlefield, and asked if that was the war Takashi went to. The confused gamer questioned if the war had truly ended, asking what happened to Takashi, and if they were the only Japanese soldiers left alive. He recalled the man on the phone lying about everything, finding the terms debris and dode strange and incomprehensible. He then questioned the man on the phone, asking if he was talking about a unit from the mainland and expressing confusion about dode and bio-soldiers. The bio-soldier declared that debris was the official name for aliens. Dode meant bris overdose or body modification, and both were classified military secrets. Takashi suddenly appeared, demanding to know why Rinko was alive, his mind reeling from a strange, incomprehensible man. Rinko's agency had ordered her to stay put, but she followed them anyway, as Sumire nervously asked if they should report to the police. A peculiar pressure, like standing before someone of great importance, washed over Rinko as she thought of Takashi. One of the machine soldiers complimented Takashi's growth, questioning why Rinko and Sumire remained so calm in a potentially dangerous situation. The soldiers announced their presence to the assembled crowd. A soldier recognized Kikyogahara Rinko and her friends, demanding to know if Rinko believed she could act with impunity. Takashi couldn't place the 6 machine soldiers and 2 special bio-soldiers, while one soldier expressed a preference for Natalie over Rinko. A bio-soldier taunted Takashi, asking if he heard the soldier speaking to him, then let out a playful sound. Takashi accused the soldiers of acting high and mighty despite their apparent lack of wartime experience, which surprised them. Takashi surmised they were drafted just 2 months ago, modified, and sent straight into battle, only to return the following month. The soldiers confirmed their recent modification and 2-month draft, noting Takashi's ignorance of Natalie revealed his weakness. Declaring they fought for humanity, the soldiers questioned why ordinary people wouldn't serve heroes, even those who hadn't personally seen combat. The machine and bio-soldiers proclaimed that true heroes were those who perished in the war, warning that the group's actions would dishonor all soldiers and the fallen. Shibusaki Takashi roared, his voice cracking with fury, vowing to kill the brat disrespecting an adult. Takashi briefly considered donning his film, then dismissed the idea, instructing Roger to eliminate the 3 on the right, dead or alive. Kikyogahara Rinko pleaded with Takashi, reminding him that, despite their flaws, they were still fellow soldiers, and he shouldn't kill them. Rinko gazed at Takashi, recognizing this as the man she knew. A flashback showed a distant, kind Takashi asking Rinko if she wanted to be friends, but she found him intimidating and in her way. Takashi then asked Rinko if she wanted to be friends, telling her not to speak so casually and accusing her of mocking him, promising rewards if they became friends. Rinko recalled this encounter as her first meeting with Takashi and her worst impression, attributing his forceful invitation to Fumika-san. Rinko thanked Takashi, believing she would have remained alone forever without his forceful invitation, and warned that their actions would lower the reputation of all soldiers. Snarling at the soldiers, Takashi called them insignificant pests. With a venomous glare, Takashi dismissed the soldiers as insignificant pests. The soldiers recoiled as Takashi hurled insults at them. Calling them insignificant pests, Takashi stormed past the soldiers. Sumire cried out, asking if Takashi cared nothing for her fate. Takashi scoffed, admitting he was indifferent. He muttered that the soldiers weren't human, their movements too swift to follow. Takashi then asked if someone could step aside for a moment. Rinko let out a strange, high-pitched laugh, urging him to endure. From the chaos came a guttural sound. Echoing through the scene was a pained cry. Pleading, a soldier cried, "That's not the slap I know! Please spare me! Somebody help me!" Another voice stammered, "Wait, stop!" A desperate plea for help rang out. Someone cried out, "Help! Forgive me! I'm sorry!" A mocking voice taunted, "Don't cry so much! Where did all that bravado go? Let's give it a makeover!" Taka urged, "That's enough, Natalie! We'll turn ourselves in!" A soldier yelled, "The military contacted them before getting in the taxi! Don't move! Save us!" Rinko reassured Sumire that she was fine, despite the machine soldier's recovery abilities. Sumire commented on how Taka hadn't changed, always giving his all for others. Rinko playfully chided Taka for scaring her, calling him refreshing and not to be treated like a fool. Rinko asked Sumire if the boy from earlier, Taka, was an acquaintance of hers. Sumire explained that Taka was her childhood friend, and Rinko noted he was younger than her. Rinko teased Sumire about her past boast of only dating handsome, older, and rich men, asking why she wouldn't introduce him. Sumire refused to introduce Taka, admitting she had harbored unrequited love for him for nearly 10 years. Sumire reflected on her 10 years of unrequited love for Taka as the first obstacle, followed by continuous challenges. She also mentioned Fumika's intense devotion to Taka, describing her as glued to him 24/7. Sumire recalled another obstacle, Taka becoming extremely popular with boys in the upper grades of elementary school. She dismissed Rinko's romantic advances towards Taka as a nuisance, noting that Taka had already gone home. Renji excitedly discussed Taka's impressive performance in the night game broadcast, highlighting his home runs and defense. Rinko thought she could finally have Takashi to herself today, but his happy expression made her wonder what was wrong. She felt it was unbelievable that he would leave her behind to play, noting he had a cute girl right next to him, and asking what she should do to make him look her way. Rinko declared that this was what happened when she got serious, that she would become an unattainable flower and make him obsessed with her, calling herself a peerless beauty. Sumire commented that Rinko's attitude had changed too much, reminding her that guys used to call her a giant woman, and assuring her she would always be her friend. Sumire recalled that when they entered middle school, she heard Takashi was drafted and felt an intense sense of loss, as if half her body was torn off, believing she would never see him again. Fumika started learning about Taka-chan's likes, remembering he enjoyed baseball, and that the rules were fairly easy to memorize, but the player traits were difficult. Determined not to lose, Rinko acknowledged her rival's nationwide fame and vowed to surpass her popularity. Proclaiming Fumika as the devoted one, Rinko resolved to embody the ultimate unattainable flower. Begging Taka while envisioning their shared future, She insisted her feelings were arrhythmia, not love, from the suspension bridge effect. Insisting impossible meant impossible, Rinko clung to their reunion, desperately calling out to Taka. Demanding Taka jump into her arms, she promised a tight embrace before scolding his hesitation as an idiot. Noticing Taka's larger, warmer frame, Rinko silently vowed to never let him go to anyone else. Amano Kyusuk declared the recent class event a triumph, proclaiming himself the king of the social scene, unlike everyone else fawning over Natalie. Rushing forward, Amano Kyusuk asked Natalie if she enjoyed baseball and offered her tickets to a game, suggesting they attend together. The narrator described the upcoming baseball game's starting pitchers as monsters, forecasting a duel between aces Iwakuma and Oshige. A scornful student accused Shibusaki Takashi of picking a fight, pointing out he had no friends after transferring and calling him an introvert. The scornful student questioned Natalie's association with Shibusaki Takashi, labeling him a loser and threatening to put him in his place. Whispers spread that Shibusaki Takashi was blackmailing Natalie, leading classmates to plan a rescue. Natalie asked Shibusaki Takashi if he wanted to join them for the night game, noting the atmosphere. A contemplative woman observed Natalie watching her since her first day, despite her attempts to read, and worried about her lack of friends. Natalie called out to Takashi, suggesting they head home, but then invited him to karaoke, saying she wanted to make new friends today. Takashi hesitated, finding the situation awkward and thinking it was beyond his reach. Someone yelled accusations at Takashi, questioning his relationship with Natalie and calling him an idiot for his supposed actions. Renji was approached by a man offering to buy his ticket for the night game at triple the price, but Renji countered, asking for 5 times the amount. Natalie defended Takashi, stating he was her best friend and a charismatic model with a large fan club, questioning the accusations. Takashi wondered if something was wrong with him, feeling unable to make friends, but Natalie assured him she would always be there. Someone realized Takashi was using his influence to control Natalie and vowed to expose the truth, unable to tolerate the deception any longer. A panel showed food and drink, with text indicating a great atmosphere after all the events. A thought bubble showed a romance novel cover, with text stating it couldn't be imposed on oneself and that chances were taken to make people work. Takashi struggled to put on a jacket, prompting Natalie to offer help and suggest he sit next to her, which he refused. Rinko commented on how unlike Takashi and Natalie were, while Natalie insisted Takashi sit with her, calling his indifference typical of a pro baseball player. Someone observed Takashi's baseball-like reading of the pitch, while another person, possibly Natalie, declared it a chance to keep her in check. Fumika praised the gourmet food, specifically mentioning the beef bowl as Takashi's favorite, which she knew because she knew all his favorites. Rinko cheered loudly, and Natalie joined in, remarking that watching a game together with such excitement was fun. Fumika interjected, stating her years with Takashi were different from Natalie's, and that she had also caused a ruckus with him and gone to many places together. With a smile, Takashi was offered his favorite drink by Natalie, who suggested they sing his favorite cheering song together, which made him happy. After the game, Natalie returned home late, explaining she had bought takoyaki and offering it to her mother. Surprised, Natalie's mother found the takoyaki delicious despite no visible octopus, asking what it was. Sherry asked where Natalie's sister was, and Natalie explained their parents called her for a discussion, inviting Sherry to join them after her transfer exams. A report was presented to Hibari Tomo, who remained impassive. A subordinate handed Hibari Tomo the investigation report she had requested. Hibari Tomo confirmed her suspicions, stating her intuition had been correct. Shibusaki Takashi longed for a normal high school life, wishing he could simply attend classes and make friends. He overheard students discussing karaoke, and the feeling of being excluded clearly bothered him. Determined to overcome the icy atmosphere, Shibusaki resolved to reach out and make connections that day. He approached a girl, asking if she cared for the charming Natalie and wanted to be friends, a tactic he'd previously used with Rinko. Other students whispered amongst themselves, warning each other to stay away from Shibusaki, labeling him bad news. A girl then asked Shibusaki if he had a moment to talk. Shibusaki eagerly agreed, seeing her as a potential friend and inviting her to ask him anything. However, she inquired about St. Petersburg, his last assignment, but he claimed ignorance of the city. She pressed further, asking for its location and warning him to speak carefully in front of everyone. The homeroom teacher announced the start of class, calling for Minami-chan to take her seat. Another student accused Shibusaki of making strange accusations, telling him not to get angry, but he questioned if he was being ordered around. Hibari Tomo arrived, instructing someone to leave the rest to her and assuring them there were no problems, as no one could defy Hibari-sama. The armored soldier entered the audio-visual room, confirming their conversation would remain private. He motioned for the other person to sit, noting the presence of firearms and expressing his reluctance to attend. Shibusaki Takashi asked what she wanted to discuss, remarking on how cold he had become and why he didn't smile more often. Hibari Tomo questioned what it meant to leave a veteran hero like him alone after his service in the Wangan Strait defense battle. Tomo confessed that a shock akin to being struck by lightning coursed through her the moment she first saw him, experiencing something entirely new. She mused about him incorporating debris cells to defeat the debris, especially shocked by the special bio soldiers, noting it wasn't simple enough to just look up. Tomo declared that the Hibari family stood as one of Japan's 3 great families, wielding overwhelming financial power that influenced the nation. She explained nirvana as a state where worldly desires are extinguished and peace of mind is attained, asking if the name had a specific origin. Tomo proclaimed that Takashi was precisely the person she had been searching for, a perfect man like a hero from a fairy tale. She announced her intention to take him to her home, stating he belonged to her and would be her groom, eager to introduce him to her parents. Takashi asked if she could perhaps look elsewhere, prompting Tomo to question what he had just said, claiming she hadn't heard him clearly. Tomo repeated that she couldn't marry him, demanding he speak plainly and asking once more if he could look elsewhere. Tomo exclaimed in disbelief that he truly said he wouldn't marry her, reminding him she was the eldest daughter of the Hibari family and asking if he refused to listen to her. Takashi told Tomo he appreciated her feelings but apologized, asking if she had another woman in mind. Hibari Tomo declared her fierce jealousy, warning Shibusaki Takashi that she would become intensely possessive if he spoke so plainly about Natalie and Sherry. The mysterious woman's voice, distorted and artificial, declared her assassins were first-rate and would move immediately if ordered, threatening that Natalie and Sherry might die if Shibusaki didn't choose her. She explained they were a special unit representing Japan, and even modified professionals would turn the tables on Shibusaki's allies, who stood no chance. Shibusaki, locking the door, demanded to know where she was going, but she cut him off, stating Natalie and Sherry possessed higher combat abilities than him. The woman revealed that to kill Natalie and the others, Shibusaki would first have to kill her, and the atmosphere shifted as she prepared to show him what that meant. Vice Corporal Shibusaki Takashi froze as the hooded figure commanded him to stop, threatening to shoot if he moved closer. The hooded figure, speaking in English, demanded that Takashi drop his weapons. Takashi stammered, confused by the hooded figure's presence and actions, while the figure repeated the command to stop. Takashi cried out that his body wasn't listening, asking what they had been doing and how to operate the weapon. The hooded figure questioned what exactly Takashi had done, referencing Debri's cells and their characteristics. Shock registered on Takashi's face as he denied intending to kill Natalie and Shelley, citing the Lucca command's temporary nature. Insisting he had no malicious intent, Takashi clarified that the Lucca protocol was designed solely for short-term immobilization. Arguing the command's intent had been distorted, Takashi stressed the urgency of clarifying its function before irreversible harm arose. The hooded figure questioned if Takashi understood, stating that even with the weapon, he couldn't kill them. Takashi asked if the figure still intended to attack Natalie and the others, admitting that such reactions hurt and made him feel like a monster. Takashi confessed he liked Natalie, stating he wouldn't have survived without her and his friends, who are like family. He declared he wanted to live for them, believing Natalie wouldn't get involved again and wouldn't do anything stupid if he went this far. The hooded figure taunted Takashi, asking if he'd played in the courtyard and questioning his sensing abilities used on a woman who called him. Takashi recoiled from the hooded figure's words, denying he would forgive her and stating she proposed passionately, while the figure threatened to mess her up and mentioned a gunshot. Shibusaki Takashi muttered that it was easy, while the hooded figure's voice, distorted and glitchy, asked if he had a minute. Tomo-chan exclaimed how amazing Takashi's experience was and expressed a desire to know more about him, but Takashi's thoughts turned to Natalie, asking what she did to her. Tomo-chan seemed to be admired by her classmates, and when she returned in a glitchy mess, she was described as a cool, beautiful, intellectual young lady. The narration referenced the Japanese children's song 100 Friends, noting a part about someone being left out. Someone explained they got in by bribing a teacher, calling it a flying entry rather than a backdoor, as their head began to hurt. Sherry commented on the uniform size being wrong and a tiny chest, while a stronger hatred welled up, surrounded by beautiful people, and seemingly borrowing Natalie's uniform. The physical fitness test began, with the instructor questioning why only transfer students were present, noting it was his first class since transferring in. Someone expressed a desire to hear more stories and happily listened, thinking they might become good friends despite their backgrounds. They recalled an oath to survive and become happier than anyone else, barely maintaining their humanity on a hellish battlefield. Takashi thought about holding back with all his might, knowing he'd be labeled a monster if he went all out, but could easily run 50 meters in under 1 second. Sherry cheered for Takashi's just right record, calling it the shortcut to his dream of becoming a high taxpayer, and celebrated their 7.5-second goal. The hooded figure's voice, filled with disbelief, questioned what they were doing and why they were holding back, wanting them to be more arrogant. Tomo-chan urged Shibusaki Takashi to take the fitness test seriously, warning him not to cry or cause misunderstandings. Shibusaki Takashi thought that even though he was already hated, he didn't need to get along with people like them, having heard the rumors. Tomo-chan grew annoyed, calling the situation crap and noticing the machine. Shibusaki Takashi yelled in frustration, smashing the screen and telling Tomo-chan to be quiet as he was trying to figure out the highest score. Sherry asked Shibusaki Takashi if he had a minute, noting he seemed to be targeted more than usual and had managed to cover it up somehow. Sherry accused Shibusaki Takashi of saying something to Natalie-san and the others, prompting him to tell her to calm down and not get involved. Shibusaki Takashi wondered how they could get closer, musing that all the girls were being ignored and perhaps they were just in a bad mood, before realizing they were talking to him normally. Sumire readily agreed to accompany Karin, ready to tag along anytime she was needed. She explained her long friendship with Karin, who had supported her when Taka-kun was drafted and protected her from Ugemi-kun. Sumire declared that spreading baseless rumors was horrible, but caught herself realizing she was being too loud with Karin's brother nearby. Karin agreed to keep quiet, but warned Sumire as an older student, noting her taste in handsome guys and considering introducing her to Renji. She mused that Renji might be too young and not rich enough for Sumire's tastes, but decided he was still a viable option. Karin spotted her younger brother, Takashi, calling out to him and noting his overly familiar behavior with his friends. Takashi greeted Sumire, surprised to see her there. Sumire was amazed, declaring it destiny that she would reunite with Takashi-kun and calling it a fateful encounter upon realizing Karin was his older sister. Sumire asserted that no matter how mean Rinko's group was, they couldn't break the bond between her and Takashi-kun, noting his change in pronoun usage. She dismissed the idea of introductions, insisting she had to clear up the bad rumors about Tak-kun and wouldn't wait. Karin playfully asked Sumire to stop calling her Oni-Goose-chan and begging for her life, as her brother was making a racket. Realizing they were drawing unwanted attention, Sumire urged everyone to calm down and focus on rescuing the blackmailed girls, questioning if another associate of his was implicated. Turning to Takashi, Sumire inquired if he recognized her from Rinko's agency. Her voice tinged with longing as she admitted how desperately she'd hoped to reunite with him. Holding up proof to Takashi, Sumire breathlessly asked if her heart was racing, then directed him to squeeze tighter, prompting Karin to demand what he was doing to her younger sibling. Karin scolded someone for trying to get close to her little brother in front of his sister, as other friends clamored to join in. Two individuals confirmed that the four had gone to Japan, admitting their attempts to stop them had failed as they were no match. They emphasized that if the four became serious, no one could stop them, as they entered a cafe. A group of companions arrived, asking if they could search for their own missing members, and if the people there were cool models. They declared their intention to find the end point and the turning point, eager to begin their search. Fumika noticed Takashi's tired expression, and he admitted she was partly responsible for his gloom. Fumika declared they would buy swimsuits, pointing out Takashi had outgrown his old ones. Natalie confirmed she and Sherry would go together, ready to compete with their swimsuits. Sumire, introducing herself as Seal, pointed out Fumika and Rinko, stating that seeing them laugh together brought her peace. A voice directly in Takashi's head identified itself as a T-type Tina, explaining that Natalie and Sherry couldn't hear it, and that there was something urgent to discuss. A familiar voice asked Taka, Natalie, and Sherry to meet him at a specific location, but Taka couldn't place who it was. Taka stammered, wondering if he had forgotten his own voice. The voice, described as refreshing yet sticky, lamented Taka's inability to recognize him, calling it sad. Taka finally recognized the voice as his longtime comrade Portman, who had been overseas since leaving the military. Taka greeted Portman, asking how he had been doing. They arrived at a military training area, which Taka noted he hadn't known existed nearby. Sherry observed that the area seemed cleared and empty, and that Portman seemed unusually lacking in energy. Natalie confirmed Portman had insisted they all come, noting his stern expression. Curiosity flickered in Sherry as she questioned why Portman, who had avoided Natalie, would seek them out now, taunting Natalie about her nerves. Frustration edged Sherry's voice when she snapped that Portman's erratic behavior made trusting him impossible. A smirk tugging her lips, Sherry leaned toward Natalie, whispering that Portman's stern act was just a facade. Defiance hardened Sherry's stance as she declared she'd never let Portman intimidate her, no matter his demands. A disembodied voice asked Taka how he had been, lamenting that it hadn't been well at all. Questioning Emily's unique sentence endings, the voice noted that Rio was already unique enough. Citing individuality, the voice explained that it consulted Emily, and that even Taka couldn't discern his inner self. Defending its use of Japanese comedy and the Kansai dialect, the voice called the questioner a dirty old man. Portman revealed that they came to Japan for a different purpose, to bring Natalie and Sherry back to the military. Portman explained that he couldn't talk about the reasons, but something terrible would happen if the two didn't return. Taka refused to return to the military, no matter the circumstances, and asked why Portman couldn't explain the situation. Portman stated he would explain when they got back to the military. Natalie insisted they were going home, calling Portman an idiot and stating it was obviously impossible. Sherry added that they were going home. Portman declared that Taka couldn't go home. Natalie calmed down, accusing Portman of planning to threaten them and stating he had guts. Natalie lamented their current situation, wishing for a normal life filled with ordinary days, a sentiment that made her and Taka laugh more freely after arriving in Japan. Sherry, Natalie, and Emily expressed their desire to savor daily life, acknowledging Portman's circumstances, but emphasizing their own need for normalcy. Taka confessed his deep love for them, stating that he was able to maintain his sanity over the past 3 years solely thanks to them. He recalled their past words of encouragement, which energized him despite the difficult daily life they shared, cherishing the good memories. Taka affirmed that their past words were not a lie, emphasizing the sincerity of their bond. Emily declared her deep care for Taka-chan, crediting him with saving her life, while Rio also expressed her love, stating Taka-chan prevented her heart from breaking. Portman insisted he didn't want to be in this situation either, but had to urging Taka to understand the circumstances they couldn't discuss and asking for his comprehension. A&L demanded to know if the military was threatening them and if they would follow her orders if they were. Her ally responded they wouldn't if Taka's situation worsened, suggesting they could simply crush any threat. A&L declared she had things she absolutely couldn't give up and would protect what mattered at any cost. The ally advised keeping things simple. He proposed the loser obeys the winner, stating it was the quickest way and that A&L's victory would mean their return to the military. Special biological soldiers, including Natalie Tafit Binkster, were announced as combat-ready. The narrative described a high-speed movement technique using anti-gravity, known as alias Sonic. Natalie announced she would handle the Carson sisters, while Sherry instructed the others to deal with Portman and Hiryu. A&L expressed disbelief at her opponent's weakness, lamenting they'd picked a fight expecting more effort. She declared her opponents were too weak to even pose a challenge. Natalie taunted Hiryu about regeneration, while Sherry told her to stop joking. A&L found the Carson sisters, firing positron cannons from extreme range, far more troublesome than Portman and Hiryu's close to mid-range attacks. She stated that no matter how strong Takashi-kun was, he couldn't beat them, and taking down the Carson sisters from the stratosphere was impossible. Sherry countered that stalling was useless, assuring A&L that Takashi-kun would be fine, as Hiryu might not know Takashi's characteristics. A&L questioned Sherry's meaning, asking if she meant it was only a fraction, to which Sherry replied that was why Takashi was the arrival point. Natalie apologized to Tak-chan, stating it was the only way. Urgently, Natalie asked Emily and Rio if they could hear her, informing them Portman and Hiryu were defeated and questioning why they hadn't surrendered. Her scoff at her opponent's uselessness echoed, as she noted the positron cannon charge would complete in 2 minutes of fight, even Tak-chan couldn't win. Without warning, Natalie suddenly felt her body move autonomously, sending a signal before she could react. Emily urged Rio to leave immediately, and Rio agreed. A&L shouted they couldn't move at all, referencing Emily's barrel tool. A&L taunted them, asking if they were surprised by Takashi's ability, explaining she was grabbing the barrels to prevent their escape, regardless of distance. She declared she would crush the barrels, warning they'd be helpless without them, as they desperately pleaded for her to stop. A&L unleashed a barrage of attacks, frustrated by the Carson sisters' evasive tactics. The battered Carson sisters surrendered, calling out that they were coming down. ANL questioned who they were actually facing threats from, stating they weren't in any particular danger. She explained their focus was protecting Takashi's daily life, as the military had become chaotic since his return to Japan. An armored soldier demanded to know if Takashi had retired, insisting he be brought out, as they couldn't live without him. The pragmatic soldier confirmed Sherry had gone to Japan, and the inspector general bought Takashi's house, prompting the military to pack and plan their departure. ANL realized her return to the military was merely camouflage, forcing her to abandon her daily life. She declared they'd wanted to protect Takashi's daily life, even at the cost of their own, but since it was lost, Natalie and Sherry could simply live in Japan. ANL stated the normal high school life she desired wasn't built on sacrificing someone else. She resolved that if they wanted to come, they could, and she would protect everything at once. While ANL and her friends waited, news broke that international diva Olivia Stagia's latest song was receiving phenomenal worldwide response. Tomo-chan then confessed her feelings for Takashi, revealing a new song dedicated to him titled I Love Takashi. Seriously, we're just 5 seconds away from having sex. Some questioned who Takashi was, but another voice insisted he was the superhero who saved the world. The conversation shifted to Olivia Stagia, with one person asking if they were acquainted, while another recalled a past argument. A character marveled at a world-class diva like Olivia Stagia appearing at their workplace and suggested listening to her music together. Someone pointed out Takashi's arrival, noting him as a reference point for Olivia Stagia, while another dismissed him. A voice called Takashi a gloomy brat and a waste of time, crushing any hopes he might have had. A character expressed disappointment, expecting a more mature and handsome guy, and accused Takashi of needing excessive sugar and milk in his coffee. The same character noted Takashi's preference for milk, mentioning that Olivia Stagia had been keeping a weird eye on him since they first met. Someone admitted they didn't understand the intent behind the situation, calling it a new kind of harassment, as Rinko urgently called Takashi. A voice mentioned hearing Olivia Stagia's new song and admitted they didn't quite get it, but acknowledged Takashi was stupid and unlikely to get an autograph. It was questioned if Olivia Stagia liked Takkun, suggesting they were on bad terms, as she seemed determined to get his attention. Someone excitedly asked if others had heard Olivia Stagia's new song, describing it as a straightforward love song and calling it amazing for a 16-year-old to be loved by a diva. A voice exclaimed about Olivia Stagia's meaning and asked if she met the hero on the battlefield, stating they didn't want to explain that it was Shibusaki Takashi. Shibusaki Takashi noted that his current situation, unlike a sigh of relief, was far from something to be happy about, acknowledging the vast difference between his reality and a desired outcome. He mused that for Olivia Stagia to fall for someone, he must be incredibly handsome, contrasting himself as a gloomy mob against a superhero persona, a difference so stark it felt accidental. Takashi wondered why he was being avoided so much, questioning if he had done something to be hated to this extent, recognizing the severity of his current predicament. Someone declared they had to do something about the situation, lamenting that the fire they started was burning too much, and that Shibusaki's cold attitude was definitely something Natalie hated. A voice announced that they had something called a report from Nirvana's judgment for Tomo-sama, questioning why she would show such a girlish smile. Someone asked if the other's sex drive was dried up, finding it strange that they kept saying things that would cause trouble, and then asked Tomo-san what Nirvana's judgment was, calling Sherry-chan cute. A mysterious character with silver hair and an outstanding slender figure named Ciel appeared, capturing the attention of the entire grade and creating enthusiastic fans. Someone wondered how Shibusaki could win over such beautiful girls, expressing jealousy, and then asked Shibusaki what his situation was. Shibusaki explained he hit it off with someone while studying abroad, and when asked about Sherry-chan, he said they hit it off in the same way, after going flower picking together. Someone mused that it was mysterious how the gloomy mob Shibusaki could monopolize beautiful girls, noting that Shibusaki hate was spreading throughout the grade and questioning what would happen if they found out it was triggered by something. Renji called out to Takashi, inviting him to eat lunch together, but Takashi felt overwhelmed by the attention. Takashi wondered if it was okay for him to be with Renji, as he felt he didn't have many friends himself. Someone commented that Takashi couldn't be a loner with his own fan club, but Takashi insisted he was a loner since he was in a different class from Rinko and Fumika. Takashi recalled being good at making friends in elementary school just by talking about baseball, even being asked by Fumika's mom to watch over her. He explained that Fumika, who he'd known since birth and shared the same birthday, would normally be the first to call him during times like this. Rinko arrived, playfully calling herself a loner too, and asked Takashi to keep her company since Fumika was absent. Takashi mentioned he tried contacting Fumika earlier, but she said she was fine, though she didn't elaborate on any trouble. Rinko reminded Takashi of their promise to meet at the mall in the next town tomorrow at 10 a.m., urging him not to be late. Takashi confirmed he would be there early, showing his eagerness for their planned outing. Takashi's thoughts briefly shifted to how much he was looking forward to the next day. A provisional notice draft appeared, mentioning Fumika Harutsubaki and a deployment in 5 days.